Hey, tennis fans, you are watching Match Point Canada, Canada's official tennis podcast. I'm Ben Lewis, and we just wrapped up our third Grand Slam of the season. Yes, Wimbledon is officially in the books, and so happy to welcome an awesome guest to the show, our friend, host at Tennis Channel, Steve Weissman, who's just back from London and back home in LA. Steve, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Always a pleasure. Landed last night, just kind of getting my life in order, but it was an awesome fortnight. So many great stories. We talked to, mostly all the players on our Tennis Channel desk. It was a pleasure. It was really cool. Got to talk to, both winners as well after their matches. So couldn't have asked for a better Wimbledon.
Yeah, it was an incredible Wimbledon, one of the best, I think, in recent memory. I want to start maybe with kind of the match that's probably freshest in our mind, which is, of course, the men's final. And I mean, for me, the new rivalry of the future in tennis. And Jannik Sinner exacts his revenge after that French Open finals loss to Carlos Alcaraz. And I thought really played a mostly flawless match, defeating Carlitos 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4. Just firstly, your thoughts on the quality of this final as we get another chapter in this new rivalry.
It was awesome. And what more can you ask for as a tennis fan to have another final coming off the one at Roland Garros, which I believe was the greatest of all time. That wasn't the same here, but you don't always expect that on grass either. But for Sinner to get the win, I thought was huge for him, having lost 5 straight matches to Alcaraz coming into this, including, that absolute heartbreaking match. And Sinner has proven time and time again that he's able to bounce back from things on and off the court, compartmentalize better than almost any athlete on the planet. And to do that, having all those championship points in Paris and losing and having all that in his head while taking the court again against a guy he hasn't beaten in 2 years, I thought was really impressive. Obviously, dropping that first set, you're thinking, all right, Carlos may have this, or it's going to go 5. And he had opportunities in the 4th set as well with a couple of break points to get back on serve, I think, when it was 4-3. So, Sinner just does what he does, which is play the highest level the most consistently. Jannik Sinner is always, at like a 9 out of 10, where Carlos, as we've seen, can go to 11 and beyond, but he can also dip. And I think Sinner backed up his second serve really well. He did that better than Carlos. He served better in general. And his movement has improved on the grass, and he worked on it with his coach, Darren Cahill. They worked on sliding on the grass. I mean, they both talk about inspiring each other, which is really cool, Ben. And this rivalry in general, just having 2 guys that truly like each other and respect each other and compete at the highest level is something that, we go from the big 3 straight to the new 2. And it's pretty special as a tennis fan. But you saw Carlos being able to have those, dynamic movements out of the corners. And now Sinner, like he does on hard courts, can do that on grass. And I don't know how they do it. It's mind-blowing to slide into shots on grass and somehow be able to keep all their limbs intact and not tear any muscles. But it was impressive. And, talking to him after, he couldn't be a more humble champion. It's all about really his family and those around him and, being able to have his parents there and his brother there. He couldn't talk more about that. That was kind of the focus of everything. And so it was cool to see.
Yeah. And I think obviously what makes great rivalries in sport is contrast and playing style. And obviously these are 2 guys who play differently. You look at Carlitos as an athlete and how many tricks he has in his book and his ability to play an innumerable but different styles of tennis. And Jannik Sinner, for me, it's interesting. Like, it's almost technical perfection the way he plays and his speed of ball. But you kind of touched on a point. I feel like we don't sometimes give him his due in terms of his mental resilience, and not only bouncing back from 3 championship points missed out at the French, but he had a couple tough spots in this Wimbledon final. The moment I remember is 4-3, 15-40 in that 4th, taking out of that hole and getting a huge hold, which ultimately brought him to the title.
Yeah, I think back, Ben, to Cincinnati last year when he knew the report was initially coming out about the whole doping situation,
Hmm.
and he won that tournament. And then the news came out after that. And then the news was out, and he goes into the U.S. Open, and what does he do? He wins.
Yeah.
And then people are talking about the whole suspension, and he knows what's going on in the background, and he wins the Australian Open. And it's really impressive. I don't know another athlete, human, that can really do that and be able to push that all aside when they're on the court. And what he has said is that the court is kind of where he can be free and relaxed, and that's amazing that he's able to do that. But yeah, I mean those moments as well in this match. Carlos just wasn't able to, at the biggest moments, produce his best tennis, and I don't think he was able to, move or be as aggressive, move Sinner enough or be as aggressive as he needed to be. Because, like you said, I mean, Sinner, when he's in a middle of the court position, he's going to dictate.
Yeah.
Ben Shelton said it. He hits the ball 2 times harder than anybody else on the tour, and when you're not using the drop shot effectively, being able to come forward and finish points at the net effectively. I mean, even Sinner was coming forward and finishing points. I just thought he played a masterclass. And to be able to do it against a guy who, like I said, he hadn't beaten in 2 years, because that's in your head too. I think
Yeah,
all
surely.
that's mental. And at
Yep.
1540, you bring up a great point. That's, it's not championship points, but it's still, those are the moments when you would, if you were a normal human, question yourself and be a little nervous. And, his second serve had Carlos, moving the wrong way. And then the next point was another, great point played. And then that was it basically after that.
Yeah. Look, as you mentioned, Alcaraz kind of had the edge in this rivalry going in. It always felt, though, like you look at their match history, it's not that Jannik was doing all that much wrong in any of these matches. It felt like it was always Carlitos doing something special. That and that being said, maybe following this Wimbledon title, do we now maybe shift that access and sort of feel like, he has a kind of a stranglehold right now in this world number 1 ranking. Now he's won a title on another surface in terms of a 4th Grand Slam. Is the axis shifting where we kind of give Sinner the edge, whereas maybe Carlos was the favorite leading into Wimbledon, or is it kind of a coin flip with these two?
It's kind of a coin flip, in my opinion. I mean, Carlos still has the edge in their head-to-head, and
Yes.
he came in having won 20 straight at Wimbledon. I think like 24, 25 straight overall. I mean, he had so many streaks alive, grass court streaks as well. Yeah. So, and he's made the finals of so many tournaments. I mean, and won most of them. So, I mean, they're 1 and 1A, 1B, and maybe they kind of shift back and forth. But Sinner's the world number 1. He's now the Lord of the Lawns. Carlos needs to respond on the hard courts. And we'll see what happens, but I don't think there's a ton between them. It's just that Alcaraz needs to go to 11 and beyond to beat Sinner, which he's done more times than not. Just didn't happen in the Wimbledon final.
You touched on this kind of at the beginning. I mean, no more big 3, and we'll get to Djokovic in a moment, but just having these two faces at the top of the sport, what does it mean, not just for tennis, but maybe globally as a whole, what these two could maybe manage to produce over the next, say, decade plus even?
It's huge. And I think there's other guys that'll kind of filter in there, and, we'll see what happens with the Ben Sheltons of the world and the Taylor Fritzes of the world. And, there's a lot of big names, Jack Draper, Jakub Menchik. I mean, Joao Fonseca could, pop up in a couple of years and join them as well. But yeah, it's cool for tennis because we just didn't drop at all, right? You go straight from 3 guys who dominated the game, unlike any that we've ever seen in history, to 2 guys who have now won 7 straight majors. And so it's like, who's gonna beat these guys? And it's going to be really difficult to beat both of them in the same tournament. Sinner was the first guy to ever beat Djokovic and Alcaraz in a same major tournament. So, I mean, and Djokovic, by the way, is still there. I just think to beat both of them, I'm not going to count anybody out, but that's a tall task. He needed Dimitrov to win that match, which, by the way, poor
Yeah.
Grigor. I mean,
Oh my God.
up 2-0 and 2-all, and then he tears his pec. I mean, you just feel for the guy. He's an awesome guy, and was having a spectacular match and playing Sinner the way you need to play him, and slicing the ball and coming forward and doing all those things. And who knows? I mean, Sinner's come back from 2 sets down before, but if Sinner loses that match, to me, Djokovic is in the final, and then who knows? Because I think Djokovic has a much better chance beating Alcaraz than he does Sinner. At this point, Sinner, to me, is Djokovic 2.0. He just does everything better and is younger and stronger and faster and all those things. So that's a tougher matchup where Alcaraz, like I said, he can show up and have a dip, and then the steadiness of Djokovic can win out. But to beat both of them back to back, I think for anybody right now, that's what's pushing every other top player on the ATP. How do I beat both of these guys? Because ostensibly you're going to have to do that if you want to win a major title. And I don't think anybody thought we'd be in this position with Roger and Rafa retired and Djokovic playing, towards the end of his career.
Yeah, no, it certainly feels like mission impossible. I'll talk on Novak Djokovic because I thought the biggest takeaway I took after that Sinner loss in his press conference was he was asked a question about if he felt like he's had a bad luck of misfortune this year or, the last couple of years with injuries. Because obviously, he had that fall towards the end of the match with Kaboli and maybe looked a little physically compromised in the match with Sinner. Obviously he retired in that match to Zverev at the Australian Open. Things happened the previous year as well with his body. And he dismissed that and said, it's not misfortune, it's simple wear and tear. And that's kind of that's the first time I can recall like Djokovic sort of really acknowledging like age is catching up to me. Was that sort of your takeaway as well, where he feels like he can play amazing tennis, his body might not be able to hold up for a full 2 weeks to win another Grand Slam?
I think it's a combination of that and Sinner and Alcaraz, because I think he beats everybody else. I still think he's better than everyone else 3 out of 5 in those situations. I just I put him above that, but that's not good enough right now. And I don't know, like, do you keep playing to make semifinals at majors? Because for anybody else on the planet, that's pretty darn good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be in the top 10 and win other titles and all that stuff. I can't get inside his mind. I know his motivation is majors and records and big goals and all those things. So, I still think 25 is possible. I think Wimbledon was his best chance. He can still do it in New York, but he needs help, in my opinion. I think he needs Sinner or Alcaraz to lose earlier. Because I still believe in him. I just don't know that he can beat those two back to back at a major. And the health affects everybody. And, I 38 is not old, but I guess it's older. And he has proven that at that age, he can still be at the top of the game. So the body's the body. You're not going to escape Father Time. Djokovic will do it better than anyone else.
Yeah. Taylor Fritz, I mean, we talk about Americans who you mentioned. He's been knocking at the door, and what a path here at the All England Club, because I look back to that first round match and particularly 4th set tiebreak against Mpeshi Perricard, where he may have had an open court one way, didn't hit the pass there. Fritz rallies, wins the match the following day, and, makes his way all the way to the semifinals. It feels like he's been to a US Open final. He's won a Masters 1000. It just feels like he's knocking at the door where he's another one of those names. I think maybe if a Sinner or Alcaraz loses early, is he a guy who could have a path to pull something off and really make noise at Flushing Meadows, for example?
100%. I picked Taylor Fritz to win Wimbledon. I picked that in December, and I stuck with it all the way through the tournament. So, it didn't surprise me that he made the semis. I think he should have pushed it to a 5th set. He would say that himself. In the semifinal. I mean, he had multiple set points there, and then you go to a 5th, and who knows? So he's making progressions every single tournament, every single year. He's right on the cusp, as you say. And as a competitor, I put him right at the top. I just think he is such an incredible competitor. And then you put that with the serve and the forehand, and he's just getting better. And, Mike Russell and Paul Annacone are such great coaches, and they will figure it out. And I still believe that he will win a major. It's going to be tough to beat both those guys, like I said, but, he had chances to go to a fifth. So could he have won it all? Who knows? But like I said, I picked him to win the tournament.
Really? Okay. I like the pick, actually. That's good. Couple other players who impressed you in the tournament. Who stood out for you on the men's side beyond the guys we talked about?
I think Ben Shelton stood out, making his deepest run there. I think that is something that, we're constantly looking for Ben to make progress at every major. He shows up at the biggest events with his best stuff and loves the big stage. And so I was excited, to see that from him, especially as an American heading into the U.S. Open, because, that's where him and Francis Tiafoe have played their best, as well as Taylor Fritz over the years. So, those were some impressive performances. I think Alex de Minaur is still doing everything that he can, to get to a certain level. I don't know that he gets past where his ranking is, which is top 10. So that means like your round of 16 quarterfinals. What do you have to do to get past that? But I think there were a lot of impressive performances, but at the end of the day, you have, the new two, Djokovic and somebody else. It's not that surprising, where we stood kind of at the end of this tournament.
One guy who also really pushed Taylor Fritz actually early in this tournament, Canadian Gabriel Diallo, stretched their second round match to a fifth set. I really did not expect to, head to July of 2025 and call Diallo our most promising Canadian men's tennis player. But that's kind of where I'm at here. And, with the new rankings out this week, he's up to a career high of number 38. What a fantastic season he's had. And while I see a lot of inconsistencies with Felix and Dennis, like Gab seems like perfectly reliable. Does he look like someone who could be, a seeded player at some of these majors next year?
I think he could be seeded at the U.S. Open. Okay. I think he's that good. I think he's progressing that fast. His serve is a problem for everybody out there. And I love his energy. I love kind of his, overall vibe on court. So, it's tough that he, at this point, is still having to play those top players early in events. So you get a Taylor Fritz, you're probably not going to win that match. But now that his ranking is up, he'll be able to, make it deeper in an event before he has to play, a top 10, top 20 guy. And so he could certainly be seeded by the U.S. Open. I like his game. I like his energy. He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
Thank you guys so much for watching us at Matchpoint Canada. If you like our work, follow along, hit the subscribe button below.